Hello and welcome to the first tutorial on PathBuilder, a PathVisio plugin for automated pathway creation. Today I'm going to show you how the plugin works after the first two milestones. This is version 0.2. As you can see, I've already opened a new pathway and now I'm going to draw nodes and edges using PathBuilder. You can do this via the input window found on the plugins, PathBuilder and then build pathway. As you can see, the user can select an input source and an input type. The input source can be either a text file or manual input typed in the text box below. So to avoid confusion, the text box is disabled when the option from file is selected and enabled when manually is selected. The input type can be either set to connections, meaning two nodes connected by a line, or nodes, meaning individual data nodes. Each input requires a different format. The format required can be seen in the manual input box. For connections, it requires information on the first data node, followed by the type of line, followed by the second data node, separated by tabs. Information on the data node is made up of a system code of the data source and an identifier, separated by a colon. Currently, different line types are not available and only normal lines can be used. This will change in later releases. When using nodes as an input type, the input can be a label, identifier, and a data source, separated by tabs. The data source can be given by its full name or by a system code. Input with a label and an identifier and without a data source is possible as well. The plugin will then guess the data source by looking at the pattern of the identifier. Input can also be a single label. The plugin will then figure out if this label can be used as an identifier. If that's the case, it will be used as an identifier as well, and the data source will be guessed based on this identifier. As an example, I will now use these two files and show you how both of the input types work. This connection.txt files contains connections and this nodes.txt file contains nodes. First, let's see how the connections are plotted. Select from file, input type connections, and then browse and select connections.txt. And now to plot them, click Go, and now the connections are plotted on the screen. And now we can start rearranging and creating our own pathway. So this is how the connections work. And now let's see how the nodes work. Let's create a new pathway and then select plugin, PathBuilder, build pathway. And this time, instead of selecting the text file directly, I will copy and paste this to the manual input box. As you can see, this list of data nodes are all built up in a different way. The first one is a label with an identifier and the full name of a data source. The second is a label, an identifier, and the system code of a data source. The third line is a label with just an identifier. The fourth is a label which can also be used as an identifier, and the fifth is just a label. Now let's plot these data nodes and see how this works. So now here the data nodes are plotted. If you look at the back package and the properties, here the identifier is put in as well as the right data source. As we can see, it's answer gene. Second, he recognizes as HMDB. This is because of this system code. The third one, let's look at that. He recognizes it's HGNC because this also looks like HDNC. And this one, let's see, here the label is the same as the identifier, and he guessed GeneWiki. And the fourth one, let's see, the fifth one, it's just an identifier. So this is how everything works. Thank you for watching, and hopefully until the next tutorial.